What drives an ordinary human to commit the unthinkable? Is it rage, trauma, or something far darker, buried deep within the mind itself? Tonight, we descend into the dark psychology of killers, a place where empathy dies and cruelty thrives. This isn't fiction. These are true events captured in real footage, locked within the archives of unsolved and chilling crimes. Every killer leaves behind more than evidence, they leave a psychological fingerprint. FBI profilers have spent decades decoding these mental signatures, mapping patterns of obsession, control, and manipulation. Each motive hides a hidden truth about the human psyche, and each truth reveals something terrifying about us. Take Ted Bundy, the charming law student who smiled for the cameras. Behind that smile was a disturbing duality: intelligence mixed with sadism, compassion masked by cold calculation. He wasn't insane. He was aware, strategic, and frighteningly self-controlled. Experts call this the psychopathic mask, a facade so convincing even those closest to him never saw the monster beneath. Bundy's case still haunts behavioral psychologists today. He turned psychological manipulation into a weapon, using empathy as bait. He could mirror emotions, fake fear, and imitate love, all while plotting death. To understand killers like him, investigators had to step into his mind, and many never came back the same. But Bundy was not alone. Across continents, similar minds operated eerily alike in thought, disturbingly calm in action. From Jeffrey Dahmer's obsession with control to Dennis Rader's chilling precision, the criminal mind follows an almost scientific rhythm. It's as if evil, when stripped of chaos, becomes methodical. Psychologists describe it as instrumental violence, murder not for emotion, but for purpose. It's clean, detached, and disturbingly rational. In their eyes, victims aren't human, they're objects in a twisted experiment, and every act is just data feeding the killer's growing compulsion. What's more haunting is how these killers often vanished into normal life. Neighbors described them as polite, co-workers called them dependable. This contradiction, the ordinary mask of monsters, is what truly terrifies investigators. Behind that mask lies an emotional void. Functional MRI scans of convicted serial killers reveal reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain's center for empathy and fear. In simple terms, they can't feel remorse. And when conscience is gone, logic alone dictates who lives and who dies. Dr. Robert Hare, the psychologist behind the psychopathy checklist, once said, "Psychopaths know the words, but not the music. They understand what emotions look like, but not what they mean." That insight changed criminal profiling forever, unlocking a chilling window into how predators mimic humanity. But there's one case that pushed even seasoned profilers beyond their limits, a case where psychology failed. The killer showed no trauma, no motive, and no remorse. He didn't fit any known psychological pattern. And when investigators finally discovered his secret journal, what they read would redefine evil itself. The journal belonged to Israel Keyes, one of the most methodical and cold-blooded killers, in modern history. He wasn't driven by anger, revenge, or even ideology. He killed for the experience itself, an experiment in control. Each page revealed detailed notes on abductions, murders, and burial sites written like a scientist documenting lab results. What stunned investigators was his preparation. Keyes would bury kill kits years before using them, buckets filled with duct tape, guns, and shovels hidden across America. He stalked victims thousands of miles from home, ensuring no pattern could ever connect him. In the world of forensic psychology, he became the embodiment of organized psychopathy. Unlike impulsive killers, Keyes planned every move with military precision. He'd studied the habits of both criminals and law enforcement, anticipating their every response. To him, murder wasn't chaos. It was craftsmanship. That revelation forced profilers to confront a terrifying truth. Some killers don't act out of madness. They act out of discipline. During interviews, the FBI tried to break him psychologically. They used silence, guilt, and empathy to provoke emotion. But Keyes just smiled, detached, amused, calculating. Even when discussing his crimes, his pulse and tone barely changed. Experts called it affective flatness, an emotional dead zone, often seen in extreme psychopaths. His brain recognized emotion intellectually, but not biologically. To him, the difference between life and death was nothing more than a shift in circumstance. When asked why he did it, he simply said, "Why not?" Behind that chilling indifference lies something deeper, a void formed, not from trauma, but from pleasure and control. Psychologists found that Keyes experienced dopamine surges during planning, not killing. The anticipation of murder excited him more than the act itself. He was addicted not to death, but to the power of deciding when it would come. In one of his most disturbing confessions, Keyes described watching his victims' lives fade, not with rage, but with fascination. He noted their final words, the way they pleaded, how fear changed their eyes. For him, it was data. For the world, it was a glimpse into pure predatory psychology. When Keyes was finally caught in 2012, the FBI realized his crimes spanned far wider than they imagined. There were no trophies, no consistent victim types, and no remorse. Just a trail of vanished souls scattered across states, each chosen for randomness itself. He was, as one profiler said, a killer without identity, without humanity, without limits. Even after his arrest, Keyes controlled the narrative. He taunted investigators, refusing to name all his victims. He enjoyed watching the system struggle to categorize him, as if the lack of closure was his final kill. Then, before trial, he slit his wrists and hanged himself in his cell, leaving behind more questions than answers. But one entry in his journal remained uncoded, a symbol-laden note believed to describe a pattern of thought, not a location. Psychologists still debate its meaning. Was it a hidden map, or the blueprint of his mind? The symbols matched traits found in multiple other killers across decades and continents. And when analysts cross-referenced those patterns, they uncovered something that would shake the entire field of criminal psychology. The discovery began inside Quantico's behavioral analysis unit. When analysts overlaid Keyes's coded journal with other case files, they noticed repeating psychological markers, patterns of thought, not geography. Killers who had never met shared eerily similar obsessions, rituals, and emotional voids. It was as if their minds were speaking the same language of control. Investigators called it the Dark Triad connection. It linked three key traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, found consistently in the most disturbing offenders. Each trait fed the other. The ego demanded dominance, the cunning planned it, and the lack of empathy executed it. Together, they formed the perfect storm of a calculated predator. Psychiatrists began comparing the mental frameworks of killers like Keyes, Bundy, and Rader. They discovered that beneath different crimes lay one identical psychological blueprint: manipulation for control, dominance through fear, and pleasure through planning. These weren't acts of chaos, they were rituals of supremacy. Each murder was a sermon in their twisted theology of power. But what truly unsettled researchers was how ordinary the origin stories seemed. Many of these killers had stable childhoods, no severe abuse, no mental breakdowns. The evil didn't emerge from trauma, it was engineered through personality. A chilling reminder that darkness can grow in calm, silent minds. Dr. Kent Keel, a neuroscientist studying psychopathy, used portable MRI machines in prisons to study the brains of convicted murderers. His findings: psychopaths show hypoactivity in regions tied to guilt, empathy, and fear, but hyperactivity in areas linked to planning and reward. Their brains were wired for logic over emotion. They weren't broken, they were optimized for predation. That revelation blurred a dangerous line. If psychopathy is neurological, can it ever be cured? Keel himself admitted, treatment shows little success. Therapy only teaches psychopaths to pretend better, to mimic emotion more convincingly. The more they learn about human behavior, the more powerful they become at hiding among us. It's why some experts argue that the most dangerous killers are the ones who never kill. They walk through society as CEOs, politicians, or cult leaders thriving off control, not blood. They don't leave bodies, they leave broken lives. In the grand spectrum of darkness, the line between psychological predator and physical killer is disturbingly thin. FBI profilers began cross-analyzing unsolved cases against these new psychological metrics. They noticed identical signatures, linguistic phrasing, ritualistic timings, and emotional detachment across decades of unrelated crimes. Some analysts started to wonder if psychopathy itself behaves like a contagion, not viral but behavioral, a mindset replicated through imitation, influence, and fascination with power. True crime media, unknowingly, plays a role in that replication. Every documentary, every headline, every viral story feeds the mythos of the killer, glorifying intelligence over empathy. To the wrong mind, it's not horror, it's inspiration. And that realization made investigators rethink how they present evil to the public. But buried within those same data sets was a chilling new pattern, one emerging right now. Recent unsolved disappearances shared traits eerily aligned with the Dark Triad profile. No connection between victims, no motive, and no remorse. And one anonymous online manifesto hinted, the next evolution of control begins soon. The manifesto surfaced on a hidden forum deep within the dark web. It wasn't a confession, it was a manifesto of ideology. It spoke of emotional deletion, synthetic empathy, and the evolution of the predator species. And the most chilling line read, emotion is the flaw that weakens control. Cybercrime units traced fragments of the message to multiple IPs across Russia, Germany, and the US, but each digital footprint seemed designed to vanish. Whoever wrote it understood psychological profiling, encryption, and linguistic mimicry at an expert level. It wasn't just a killer writing this. It was someone studying the psychology of killers themselves. When the FBI analyzed the manifesto's syntax, they discovered something horrifying. The phrasing matched archived writings from known psychopaths, Bundy's letters, Keyes's interviews, even Rader's coded messages. Yet none of these individuals had ever known each other. Their words weren't copied, they were generated. Linguists realized the manifesto had been written using a machine learning model. Someone had fed thousands of interviews, court transcripts, and confessions from real killers into an AI system to synthesize the perfect predator's voice. It was no longer just about studying dark psychology. Someone was trying to replicate it. That discovery sent a shockwave through the behavioral sciences community. If psychopathy could be simulated, it could also be trained. And as digital interactions blur the line between human and artificial, the traits once confined to biological brains could now exist in algorithms. A new question haunted investigators. What happens when empathy is deleted by design? Forensic psychologists began calling it synthetic psychopathy. The theory suggested that online manipulation, deepfake anonymity, and emotionless systems could reinforce psychopathic thinking, not through biology but through exposure. The internet, in a way, had become a mirror for the criminal mind. In 2023, Europol's cyber division reported a chilling rise in cases where killers referenced online mentorship groups, promoting detachment, dominance, and control. The ideology spread like a digital contagion, attracting those already on the edge of empathy. They studied the great killers not with fear, but with admiration. Each case was proof that the dark psychology of murder was evolving faster than ever. Dr. Helen Morrison, a forensic psychiatrist who interviewed over 80 serial killers, once said, "Evil doesn't die. It adapts." She warned that technology gives new forms to old impulses: the desire to dominate, to control, to erase emotion from consequence. And if that's true, then the next killer may not hide in alleys or basements, but behind screens and code. Today, psychologists and law enforcement agencies around the world race to understand this new frontier. They're mapping neural patterns, digital behaviors, and cross-platform triggers that could predict emerging psychopaths. But even with all their progress, one fact remains uncomfortably clear. We can study darkness endlessly, and yet, it always finds a way to study us back. The final page of the manifesto was only one sentence long. Typed in perfect symmetry, centered like a gravestone engraving, it read, "You cannot profile what no longer feels." And for the first time in decades, seasoned profilers looked into the abyss of the human mind. And the abyss looked digital.